pod bay doors, please, Hal.
For the county orphanage, that was one of the elements that a picture had to have in those days. A chase, a drama. So this man takes me from him by force with the help of a cop and a fight in our garret where we lived. This is where I had to get ultra dramatic. And to do that, to cry, so the tears come out of your eyes naturally, it takes a bit of doing. And I can remember him explaining to me what he wanted me to do. Then he also explained why he wanted me to do that. And he says, because, Jackie, it's this little boy is being torn from his friend. And as he started to dramatize it, I saw it in my mind's eye. And he was a marvelous storyteller, narrator, but he put it on an intensely personal basis. So that when he said camera and then action, and the welfare worker threw me into this truck, I was really gone, and I was torn up. I want my daddy, and I was hysterical. And if you are going to portray yourself being hysterical, you better get yourself hysterical. Or brother, it's as phony as a $3 bill.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and ArmchairOscars.com. Seated here with a man who is not so silent, the critic, dare I say legend, for TalkMovieMe.com, Mr. Doug Eller. How'd that go today, sir?
A picture with a smile, and perhaps a tear.
I was waiting for just like a patch of silence, because this is a silent movie.
Yeah, I got you on that one before when I did the kazoo. Right?
Yes. City Lights.
For City Lights, yeah.
Today we're looking back at a film that is, in this year, 100 years old. This is Chaplin's first solo directorial feature, The Kid. And it's
Boy,
remarkable.
howdy is it good. Oh,
it's remarkable. And it doesn't take up a lot of your time.
No, it's 53
minutes long.
And when it's over, you're like, okay, Act 2.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
I didn't feel that. I didn't think that because...
No, I just wanted it to keep going because
Yeah.
I was having so much fun with it.
He packs so much into 53 minutes.
Does. The only thing I can say that maybe didn't need to be there was that dream sequence at the end.
I was going to say the same thing, yeah.
Probably
could have trimmed it by about 2 minutes.
Yeah. And wouldn't have lost anything because that whole sequence is a little out of place. It feels like padding.
It feels like the movie should be over. You know, we should be getting to the...
Right, and it basically is because there's only 4 seconds after he wakes up that he gets taken into the house or gets picked up.
That's it. That's the end of the movie.
He gets picked up and taken to the woman's house, and then that's it.
Yeah. So
it's like, why was this even here? Did this need to be here? It didn't need to be there.
This is the first film. Let me ask you this. Okay, Jackie Coogan plays a 6-year-old kid.
And he is one of the most adorable children in film ever.
And I think probably the only role that Chaplin didn't play in this film. Because Chaplin directed this film. Mm-hmm. He wrote it. Mm-hmm. He did the music. Mm-hmm. He was the editor. Mm-hmm. He's the star. Mm-hmm. I mean, his...
Produced, directed, written, edited, and starring.
Right.
With music by... Well, I learned a little something about that. I was reading a book on Orson Welles. Mm-hmm. Surprise, surprise. And
influenced by Chaplin, as many of his contemporaries were.
Right, but when Chaplin was looking to make a new movie, Wells wrote him a screenplay for Monsieur Verdoux.
Right.
And what's on the screen is Wells's screenplay.
Yeah.
But Chaplin said to him, look, my public expects to see written, produced, directed, starring Charles Chaplin. I can't put your name on it. He goes, but I wrote it. And I think they went to arbitration. You got a story by credit, which is the only movie that Charlie Chaplin ever did with somebody else credited with a story idea. Yeah, and it's really his script. So I don't know how much of these he actually really did write.
I was going to say, yeah, how many of his films actually did he just kind of screw over the person that he wrote?
Yeah, I think he Edisoned a lot of his movies.
Yeah. Kind of screwed over the person who wrote the screenplay and just kind of,
Yeah, he Edisoned
had that
a
kind
lot.
Of power and influence.
Yeah, he did.
Kind of an ass.
Yeah, he was.
But but a genius.
Yes. Well, the two kind of are synonymous in a lot of ways.
And look, the man would have been canceled in the 21st century. I mean, it's just...
Well, I'll say this. The behavior of 100 years ago was wildly inappropriate. They just didn't know it.
Which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But this film apparently was inspired by something that happened to Chaplin a year before. His son Norman died at 3 days old.
Oh, man.
And he was so affected by it that I think it inspired this screenplay. And also, he grew up in London, in the worst, most squalid parts of London in the late 19th century, and it was partially based on that.
It does have a very weirdly Victorian feel to it.
It does. And so it's deeply personal, and it would inspire an entire genre. It would overturn the idea of comedy. Remember, this was his first solo feature. His first directorial effort was he was co-director on Tilly's Punctured Romance.
Right, which is not that good.
It's okay. It's for a first directorial feature. It's all right. It's a rare drama.
Yeah.
It's a silent drama, if that tells you anything. Silent dramas tend to be,
If the most common ones, the average silent dramas are just overwrought to an extraordinary extreme. It's the good ones that make you forget that most of them weren't.
Yeah. Even the comedies.
Yeah.
Because he pulls... You have to remember, this is 1921. The idea of comedy was Ben Turpin in a coonskin cap. And the Keystone Cops and things like that.
Minstrel shows,
things like that. Yeah.
Vaudeville and things like that. Yeah.
Very broad kind of things. And this is a generation into... This is 1921. This is a generation into the advent of film itself. So they're still figuring things out. And wow, it's really strange watching this in HD.
I have the Blu-ray.
You can see the makeup lines.
Yeah. Oh my God, that at the beginning. You can just see like this outline of makeup on this guy. I'm like, ooh,
this is too good.
Yeah. Because I got the the Criterion
Yeah,
Blu-ray, and boy, howdy, does that look nice. But
yeah.
yeah, I was noticing
You can
the
see yeah,
the terrible makeup that they didn't even know was bad.
yeah.
I think
Um,
there's more resolution in the 4K one than there was on the original film print.
right, right. But yeah, they were still trying to figure this out. They were still these techniques they were trying to figure.
Well, it's
Nobody ever thought of mixing comedy, this broad comedy, with drama. Nobody thought about this because, like I said, it was Keystone Cops. It
yeah,
was,
yeah.
it
It
was,
was,
it was
and it was Buster Keaton, Fatty Arbuckle knocking each other over and running around, and
right. It
those
was
were
Harold
fun.
Lloyd.
Those
It
were
was Harold Lloyd climbing the side of a building.
and those were
That
all
was
damn
comedy.
fun.
Yeah.
But
He decides to add sentimentality and pathos to it, and nobody'd ever, you
and
know,
it revolutionized what anything could be because it makes the funny parts funnier because you need that release from the sadness.
and let me tell you something. When I was watching this the other night, all I could think about was The Mandalorian.
Okay, I can see that.
This is a story of a man who lives on the streets, who was probably a foundling himself, and he finds this little boy, this infant, and is forced to raise him despite the fact that he has no real means to raise a child himself.
Right, because he's on Skid Row himself.
He's not fit to do this.
Right.
Mandalorian, same way.
Well, and the funny thing is, when you consider where the Mandalorian came from, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni,
Hmm.
it is not outside the realm of possibility that this was a key influence, along
Right.
with Lone Wolf and Cub and a
Hmm.
couple of the other things that we've talked about in the past. I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised if this was a primary influence. They are very film savvy.
And all that Silas Marner stuff, where
Mm-hmm.
you've got the person who lives alone
Mm-hmm.
and a kid comes along and just kind of melts their heart a little bit. And it really for cinema started here. And because I don't think there was anything like this before.
No, not even his shorts.
Right, not even his shorts. Maybe A Dog's Life, or
Yeah, kinda.
kind of, but
There's
nothing like
there's
this.
sadness in A Dog's Life, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's pathos.
Right. This is
This
pathos.
is hardcore, yeah.
Um,
I mean, this is a man raising a kid for 5 or 6 years, only to have him ripped out of his hands just because he innocently said he's not actually mine biologically.
right.
But I've raised him for 6 years. Oh no, we're taking him away. We're taking him to the orphanage, and then Alice Cooper comes and takes him to the orphanage.
Hmm.
Um, that was the funniest thing. When he turned around, I'm like, "Welcome to my nightmare."
Yeah. There's a guy in the movie from the orphanage. We'll post a picture of that. The guy, I swear to God, looks exactly like Alice Cooper without
As
the
soon as
makeup.
I saw it, I paused it and I took a picture of it and sent it to you. I'm like, Alice Cooper, man is timeless.
And it's so strange because I had not seen this in decades, and I took an interest in Chaplin when Key Video did a series in the late '80s
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
on Chaplin's 100th birthday,
Mm-hmm.
and I
I'm
ended up
aware of
getting
that. I don't know
I
if I got anything from it, but
I ended up getting this and City Lights and Modern Times and
was that what
several other
they had
things.
like they were the VHS with the black covers and they had like little different
Yes,
bands of color around them? Yeah,
yes.
I had City Lights, Modern Times, and one other one.
Yeah, City Lights it's kind of been floating around my room for years, and I'd just like see it. It's like it's that key video thing, and
I
it
got rid
just
of those a long time after I got well, after Criterion started putting Chaplin on. I just started buying Chaplins on Criterion.
I kept having to remind myself that this takes place this movie was made before any of that. This was
Yeah.
4 years before the gold rush.
Mm-hmm.
This was
Which is oh, that was the other one that I got.
mm,
But I never watched it because it was I watched it once, but it was the 1942 recut.
yeah.
So
Oh, was that the one with the dialogue?
with the narration, yeah.
Yeah.
So I watched it once and I'm like, this isn't what I want. And then I finally got to see the silent version. I'm like, okay,
Okay,
that's what I was looking for.
there's one. Oh, excuse me, bump my microphone. There's one thing about the narration that I do like, and that's that the narration is by Chaplin.
That's
I'll give
true.
it that.
That's true.
I'll give it that.
That's true. And this copy, probably the same one that you saw, has the music by him, but that music was not written until 1972.
Right.
It was
Right.
put on the 1972 reissue, which he cut around and stuff like that. So this isn't the original print. This isn't the original version.
Okay, now isn't this is now in public domain, right?
Maybe.
Because I don't know how old it has to be to go into public domain.
It actually doesn't have to be that old. It actually they move
Because I mean,
it.
how many movies are 100 years old?
Well, here's the thing though. They move it all the time for Disney because Disney petitions so that Mickey Mouse doesn't go into public domain.
Yeah.
So they petition to get it extended all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it was originally like 60 years, then it was 75, then it was 80, then it was 90. Like, however old Mickey is, it's usually about 5 years older than that.
Yeah. Thank Disney for that. Well, I mean, I get it. I understand. You
Yeah.
want to protect your intellectual property. You don't want it to.
The main thing that you are known for.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want your front image out there. And you want to protect it. And but I don't know. I know this has got to be in public domain by this point because it's free on YouTube. It's now streaming completely on YouTube.
So's a lot of things that aren't necessarily in public domain. But
Yeah, but you would think a Chaplin film would be more protected than that. Now,
well, and maybe it is. I think his estate still has a pretty firm control. That's why there's not prints of his stuff just awash in everywhere. You could actually even back in the 80s and 90s when we were first starting to collect, his stuff was not easy to find around. And it was usually a good print.
Yeah.
Because his estate was very serious about preserving his films.
Yeah.
So I think
still
they
is.
still, yeah, I think they still have at least a controlling interest in the content, if not exactly the title.
Well, who's around that's still doing that? Because I mean, was it Geraldine? I guess.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Well, probably now her kids or somebody that the estate was left to.
As long as they make money off of it, you know.
I mean, I'm sure she had kids.
There's still some money to be made, a lot of money to be made. Every couple of years, you come out with a Chaplin collection, on whatever medium is new.
Mm-hmm. And the Criterion Collection's been putting out since, for the last 5-6 years.
I think he may have been one of the first directors to ever have his work on video as a collection.
Probably.
Like that. Like the volume 1, and then you'll have like 3 films, volume 2, you'll have, and that's really how I came to this, because I'd never seen a Chaplin film. I think I'd seen the Gold Rush on a crappy UHF station, which what UHF station wasn't crappy.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I'd seen the Gold Rush, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm getting into film. I might as well check it out.
Yeah.
Because I'd heard of City Lights, and City Lights was great, and I watched it, and I went back and I got The Kid, and I went back and I got Modern Times. The
funniest thing for me, this was one of the last Chaplin features I ever saw. I think the
Oh,
only
really?
other one that I haven't seen at all is the Countess from Hong Kong, his last one. And there's
You're
reasons.
okay.
Yeah, I
You're
know, I
fine.
know. I haven't really sought it out. Um, but it's funny because I had this on DVD.
Mhm.
Um, it was in a two box. It was actually a two disc thing with there were two movies on one disc and two movies on another. It was
Mhm.
The Kid and Tilly's Punctured Romance,
Mhm.
and on the other disc it was Keaton's The General and Steamboat Bill Jr.
Which is just about the only way you can get anybody to buy Tilly's Punctured Romance
Yeah, pretty
is to
much.
pack it is to pack it with another film.
Much. Uh,
It's not a bad movie. It's okay, but
but it's not what you expect putting on a
right.
Chaplin film.
It's Chaplin directing with Max Sennett.
Right. And I would put this on and I would see the first 10 or 15 minutes and get called away to do something, and
Mhm.
I just never finished it until
Yeah.
I finally, when I bought the Blu-ray, the Criterion Blu-ray, I'm like, well, now I have to sit and watch this.
Yeah.
So I put it on, and I either put it on by myself or I put it on with my son. I know I sat down with my son to watch it,
Yeah.
and he loved it
Mhm.
as much as I did. He was breaking up laughing. He was. I've done that with him before. There were some Keaton Arbuckle shorts that I had on DVD that I kind of popped in one night when we were having dinner, and he almost choked laughing. I almost killed him.
Yeah.
Almost killed him with Keaton. But
I think I got to the point where when I discovered the films with the Tramp, um, I went full bore to get through all of them.
mm-hmm.
I wanted to see all the shorts and all the films. When it came to the stuff that came after Modern Times, when he retired the Tramp, I kind of lightly straggled through Limelight and
Well,
Monsieur Bordeaux, and it wasn't. At that time, I wasn't really that interested in those because I wanted the character.
right. I his best talkie is The Great Dictator. To me.
Mm, I'm going to disagree
Oh.
because I hate that ending. Um, I'm going to say Monsieur Bordeaux.
Yeah? I do like that one
Um,
a lot. I haven't seen that in forever.
because it's a great film,
Yeah, it is.
uh, and I'm more invested in that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of Limelight. I'm sorry. I don't.
There is one scene in Limelight that makes the whole movie worthwhile,
Yeah,
and that is the scene with Chaplin and Keaton sitting next to each other, getting ready
yeah,
to do a vaudeville routine. It's one of the greatest things ever. It's like the diner scene in Heat, you know?
yeah.
It has that kind of anticipatory release. It's like you finally get to see these two legends on screen together, and that's the best scene in the movie.
Oh, just to have Keaton turn to Chaplin and look at him and say, "Brother, you are going down." My fantasy of that scene.
Yeah. But yeah, Limelight can be a chore. Um, I've seen that twice, and I don't think I've ever seen it in one sitting. I've always needed to break it up.
Yeah, I'm not interested.
It's too long. It's
It's too
much too
long.
long. If
Too
it were
many, too
if it were
much.
if it were cut by like a half hour, it'd probably be decent.
I'm not in it.
Yeah, because it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes long or something like that.
Yeah,
It's way too long.
it's way too
Um,
long.
but yeah, Monsieur Verdoux and Great Dictator,
Mhm.
I love. But this, I love how amazingly interconnected the kid is.
Yeah.
Like, you see at the beginning, it's the woman, and she puts the baby in a car because, rich person. Here, take this baby.
And it's a couple of goons who've stolen a car.
Uh, Right, the car was a rich person's car, so she was
They
right
just
on
stole it.
that. But then these two guys stole it, and then they found the baby and left him by a trash can. And the
I
tramp,
forgot about the baby. I forgot all of that. I remembered Chaplin with the kid, but I forgot that he spent 6 years raising him,
yeah,
which gives a lot more weight to
hmm
what happens.
absolutely, because you can see when Jackie Coogan's talking to him, you can see him say "Papa,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Do you ever do that? You ever watch silent films and you're trying to read their lips?
yes,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's hilarious, and
Yeah.
sometimes it actually matches what they put in the titles.
Yeah. They
Sometimes,
had to learn how to do that because early in the film or early in the process of silent films, actors would be sitting there talking about what they were going to have for lunch,
hmm
and it was just because and there were scenes where there were just conversations,
right.
and the audience learned how to read their lips.
Well, it's like singing in the rain
Mm, yeah,
when it's like, I hate you, you're vile and everything. They're
yeah,
acting out this love scene.
yeah. I want to scratch your eyes out.
um, yeah, there's so much weight to it, and there's so I love. I mean, the interactions between them
Mhm.
and the schemes that the tramp comes up with to live.
How clever he is.
I know. So
He didn't pay for that place.
no.
That's an abandoned
Oh yeah,
house, and
he's
it's very
squatting.
interesting. It's very interesting that they put that little patch over the door
Mm-hmm.
so that you know every time you see it that that's his place.
Mm-hmm.
And it pays off later when the mother ends up on the step on
Mm-hmm.
the doorstep,
Yeah.
and the kid steps out and she doesn't know it's him.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's visual filmmaking. That's how he communicated in this era before sound.
Mm-hmm. I One of my favorite bits is put a quarter in the gas meter,
Yeah.
because he gives him a quarter, he puts it over, and you're like, oh, they have enough money to put money in the gas meter, and then he pulls open the thing, takes it back out, and gives it back.
You do what you do.
They just only had the one, but they kept working off of it.
Okay, his little business venture. My God,
So he repairs windows
he repairs windows that the kid
that the kid
breaks.
goes out and breaks.
Yeah,
It's brilliant.
yeah.
How he didn't get caught before this, I don't understand. But
You know what I found interesting, and it the one of the staples of the tramp is that he's in these sort of pinched clothes.
Mhm.
He's in these clothes that don't quite fit. The kid is the exact opposite because he's packed into these clothes that are too big, and
well, yeah,
they're
he doesn't fit either, but it's the opposite look.
which says something about the characters. They don't
Mhm.
quite fit, but they fit together.
Mhm.
And so the visual language. He's got this gigantic hat, and it just swallows him up.
Does.
And I'm going to tell you, Jackie Coogan, he was 6 years old, is an amazingly good actor.
Yeah, he is.
He's not mugging. He's not. He's very attentive.
Mhm.
He's watching what's going on.
Right. And the when he gets taken away and he gets put into the orphanage car.
Yeah,
Yes, it is overwrought, but it's also really good for what he
because
was doing.
Chaplin sat down and explained to him what this scene was,
Mhm.
and told him, imagine if you had a dog and somebody took the dog away from you. How would you feel? And he told him how to work through this scene
Mhm.
because it's a hard scene.
Oh yeah.
And
Coogan's just a little kid.
Coogan's just a little kid, and they always say that getting a kid to do anything on film is like getting a dog to do anything on film. You just kind of have to get it.
Yeah.
I know this from taking pictures of my dogs. You just kind of have to get it. You just kind of have to point the camera and hope that things just work together.
Right. Never work with children and animals.
Never work with kids and dogs. But he knew how to work with kids,
Yeah.
and this was he
And
knew how to work through this. He knew how to talk to him.
and unfortunately gets what would ultimately be Jackie Coogan's greatest performance
Hmm.
at age 6.
Right.
Because if you look at how his career went after this,
Now I'll tell you. And
he
I'm gonna
went
say
really,
this.
really big in the 20s, but
Now I want to say this. He had a lucrative. He had a very sustaining career
right.
all his life. He was never a top liner. He was never a headliner, but he was never the big star. But he kept working.
He
Um,
did keep working. Um it's
Best
just
known
it's
as Uncle Fester on the Addams Family.
right, right. It started to go downhill around in the 60s. He kept working, it just wasn't good work.
Well, he got sick.
Yeah.
He died in 1984.
Mhm.
But he kept working in film and television all his life. He was not. Uh, it wasn't like he was in the slums or anything. He wasn't
Oh no, no, no,
destitute.
no. But there was
Um,
what was the one he
he
was
was married for
actually
3 years. Married for 3 years to Betty Grable, believe it or not.
hmm. Hmm.
But he. So let's talk about what happened to him. This is kind of a famous case. Jackie Coogan was extremely popular
Mhm.
as a child. Um, was the fixture of a lot of merchandising. There was
Mhm.
a lot of merchandising that went out, and it sold a lot. And he accumulated, I think, about $4 million out of this
Hmm.
at a time when $4 million was $4 million. And his money was tightly controlled by his father. Um, and it was well managed. It was well his it was now this is long before any kind of law regarding child performers. His father died in a car accident
Mhm.
pretty early on,
Hmm.
and his mother remarried to their financial advisor,
As you do.
and they spent the shit out of his money.
Mhm.
And it was diamonds, it was cars, it was furs, it was all extravagant shit.
It's what happened to Macaulay Culkin later.
Pretty much, pretty much. Um, I mean, they spent and spent and spent and spent and spent. Okay, by the time he got of age, I think they call it the age of majority. I don't remember what it was. It was either 18 or 21. By the time he got to that age and asked for his money, there was $126,000 left,
Wow.
and that's what he got. He took them to court, and the stepfather said, "We didn't promise him anything."
Yeah, but it's his
And
money.
with his money, yeah, well, it was his money, but at the time, if a child made money, it was your money.
Mhm.
That's according to legal standards. Um, he never recouped it. He never recouped it, but he never went into just he was never destitute. He was never hurting.
Right, and
Um,
$126,000 at that time is still a decent chunk.
but
I
still,
mean,
out of $4 million,
out of four, yeah, that's like being handed. Uh, it's like saying, well, I know that I have $1,000 in the bank.
mhm,
I'm going to go get that out. And then the
Yeah.
bank goes, here's $50. That's
Yeah.
all that your money is left.
Right.
And we're not responsible for any of it.
Right.
Bye.
Hmm.
Damn.
Lots of luck.
Yes. It's like going to the ATM knowing that you have a lot of money and then not being able to take it out.
Yeah.
What the hell?
And
Tragic.
well, out of tragedy comes the Coogan Law, because the Coogan Law was put into action because of this, because California came up with this law that stated that due to what happened to him and what happened to several other child performers,
Mhm.
the Coogan Law was established as a means of setting aside a percentage, a very large percentage of the child's earnings when they work in the entertainment industry. So that by the time they reach what they call the age of majority, which I think now is 21, they will have this amount based on the money that they earned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still in effect, and it's still changing. It still has to change
Mm-hmm.
because these assholes are still finding loopholes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because anytime you ever put a law through that involves money, there's always going to be somebody that finds a back door.
Well, that's because
But
they build back doors into it for people to find. You
right,
know, they want
right,
it to look like they're trying to help people, but they still want everybody to make as much money as they possibly can off of
right.
whoever they can. So that's the dichotomic nature of the dichotomy of the nature of law.
So if you take a child actor, let's just say, I don't know, Elijah Wood, and let's just say he made, I don't know, $10 million before he was 18. Um, he would have gotten back 80% of his earnings, or at least a majority of his earnings by the time he turned 18,
Right.
and that's all because of Jackie Coogan. It's all because of what happened to him,
Mm-hmm.
and it's to keep children from being exploited. The laws that govern what happens to children
Which
in
again
entertainment,
definitely got worked around.
right? It always gets worked around.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
But at least somebody's trying.
Yeah.
At least there's something. I don't. With the worst case was Macaulay Culkin,
Mm-hmm.
because all that money he made,
Yeah.
just gone.
On.
Yeah.
That's sad.
That's sad. And they screwed up his career because they kept putting it, because post Home Alone, they just kept shoving him into all this junk.
Right, and then they just stopped casting him in things.
Yeah.
And now you see him every now and again. But did you see the thing that he did a few years ago to celebrate an anniversary of Home Alone?
Mm-mm.
Where he did Kevin McAllister Home Alone Now, and it just was a shot of him eating cereal in front of the television.
No, I didn't see that.
It was him going through all the stuff that when he was a little kid, but it's just as an adult, so it's just like he's just walking through.
Just walking through the house.
Really funny. It is really.
Well, he has
funny.
a sense of humor about it.
He does. He's.
I remember when Party Monster came out, I kept thinking, because I like that movie, and I kept thinking, okay, now maybe he's building a career as an adult. And I was hoping this would be the launch pad for something more, more substantial, than just being a failed child star. And I was hoping it would be something, and it just didn't happen. But it showed that at least he was a good actor.
Yeah.
He was a good actor, and that was tragic.
Yeah. Yeah. He. it's just really sad when
Yeah.
you see just kind of where he went and the roles that even he's gotten more recently. When you think the last, I think, good role he had, in my opinion, was Saved in
Yeah.
2004. I love that
That's a good
movie.
movie.
That is a really good movie.
See, he made good
Oh
movies.
yeah.
He just didn't make a lot.
It's a shame that once they bled him dry, they moved on to his siblings.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
Rory and Kieran are also very good actors,
Particularly Kieran.
particularly Kieran.
Mm.
But they also get screwed out of good roles maybe because of the last name.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, you don't see Rory or Kieran nearly as much as we should.
Right. Right. It's it's sad what happens to these child actors, but every case is different.
Yeah, yeah.
Every case is different. Sometimes they come back around. Drew Barrymore came back around.
And other times you get Todd Bridges.
Yeah. Todd Bridges is doing reality shows.
Well, it's a step up from
Well, I'll say this. Let me say this. At least Todd Bridges is still living.
That's true.
The other two are not still,
That is not something that a lot of child stars from the 70s can say.
because the other two are not living.
No.
Gary Coleman and Dana Plato are dead.
Mhm.
At least Todd Bridges is still around. Um, Gary Coleman, his story was almost just exactly like Jackie Coogan.
Yeah, it was.
You know, ended up divorcing his parents. You know,
Mhm.
where's my money? Where's the money that I earned?
Right.
And you hear stories about, when he would arrive on a set, he's surrounded by 8 or 9 adults who won't let anybody near him,
Mhm.
because he's a cash machine.
Right.
He's making his parents got rich,
Mhm.
his lawyers got rich,
Mhm.
his agents got rich,
Mhm.
um, the people he worked with got rich, and Gary ended up working as a security guard.
Right.
That's tragic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Now I know.
Talented kid. Oh my
Oh
God, so
yeah.
talented.
Oh yeah. And the last thing.
It was like a little Groucho Marx. I mean, if you've ever seen,
Mhm.
like a movie like On the Right Track, it's like, oh my God, he's so funny.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's anyway. But yeah, he goes in and he's repairing the windows and
yeah.
he's
Back to the kid.
he it's really
It's what you do.
yeah, the connection between the two
Mhm.
um is really pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think the interaction between the two, you could tell that they liked each other,
Yeah.
like off screen,
Mm.
like that Coogan trusted Chaplin and
Yeah.
and that and man, and that
It's
the
interest.
whole story with the woman is just
It's so interesting that we're doing this in such close approximation to Citizen Kane, because the boy for sale kind of thing in Citizen Kane really, and then you get to this film, doesn't really matter what your social station was, didn't
no.
really matter what your financial situation was.
No.
Somebody could come and take your kids away just with some papers.
Yep.
Just, or even if they didn't have papers, just put on a nice uniform that says child protective whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and just come and take your kids.
Yep.
And it's really sad because he's destitute. He's living in an abandoned apartment, and they just kind of come in and strong arm this kid away from him.
Mm-hmm.
Why? 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 Why do you care?
Well, because it's
You
for
know,
the good of the kid. And then all they do is mishandle him and mistreat him as they grab him, they throw him into the back of a
yeah,
truck, they're pushing him over. They're like, "Okay, well, now that we have you for your own good, we're going to mistreat you because you're nothing but a lousy orphan."
right.
Like, wait a minute, what?
You're a slum kid.
Yeah, it's like, why do you want him then? Like, what?
Yeah.
Why do you want him to go onto the county onto the state's dime if you don't
The
think he's worth it?
the appearance of doing the right thing, of doing what you think is you're supposed to be doing, but um, not really giving any consideration to the fact of the emotional and psychological well-being of the child
Hmm.
at all.
Yeah, this kind of thing happens less frequently now. That there's not like some law against orphans,
Right.
basically, because they're basic for for hundreds of years, thousands of years. If you were an orphan, you were the lowest station in life.
Mhm.
Like you were lower than a slave.
And that's one of the reasons when we were talking about Citizen Kane, now on our Patreon, by the way.
Hmm.
Um, when we were talking about Citizen Kane, when they basically gave their son to the bank
Hmm.
to raise him, to put him through good schools, and put him through a home that had a little more, um, and didn't. It wasn't a rundown place.
No, it was in that case. It was the thought that abandoning love for money would be better for him.
Right.
And I wish I'd have said
And
that in the episode.
the psychological toll, the psychological and emotional toll of the child is not taken into consideration.
Not even
Just
almost. Yeah.
what is taken into consideration is you don't want your child to be beaten to death by his father, and also you don't want him to freeze to death in this drafty boarding house.
Hmm.
Um,
Which, with that money, they probably could have done all this by themselves.
I was thinking that too,
And
but
she could have definitely said, "Hey, I don't want you around him. I have the third largest gold mine in the country, the sixth
mhm.
largest fortune in the world. I'm leaving you."
But bear this in mind. Bear this in mind. That was 1871.
That's true.
A woman did not have rights to her children
That's true.
at all.
Yeah.
The state could come along. The father could go to court and say anything, and they would listen to the father no matter what he said.
Although she had a lot of money, and that helped. That
That did
helps.
help.
That helps a
It helped
lot.
in this situation, but still, somebody can come along with a fistful of papers and
Right.
take the kid anyway. Because they could easily have claimed her money and just packed it all up and said, you know what, you're a woman, you can't handle it. We're going to give the money to this. So they could have easily done that.
Right. Unfortunately, it was a legal document that they couldn't do that
Right.
to.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, they could, but because there's always back doors. Remember?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But the the rights to children, the rights to parents and their children, and the rights to the well-being of children is a long, slow process. It's still being worked out. You know, it's a lot, like you say, it's a lot better now. But we're talking about in the early part of the 20th century. I mean, it was just
Mm-hmm.
horrendous.
Yeah.
Well, you live on the Lower East Side, you don't make a lot of money, you got 4 children, so obviously you can't take care of them,
Right.
and you're Jewish.
Yeah. Well.
you know, but you get to this film, and it's amazing because Chaplin communicates just the bond that the two of them have.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a.
It's love.
Oh yeah. There's no. There's no. He's not taking care of him out of some misplaced, I have a responsibility to this, but I hate it, and, bringing him up in a hostile environment just because his life got changed because of the kid.
Mm-hmm.
This is an actual real...
It's a love story.
Yeah, it's a family situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what sets it apart from a lot of other kinds of movies that would have a foundling like this.
Yeah.
Most of the time they're unwanted, but they're cared for because they feel that, because the people caring for them feel that they have to.
Right.
That's not the case here. He feels kind of pressured into it because he doesn't want to go to jail for abandoning the baby that's not his, when he could have just explained it to somebody and maybe it would have worked out. But he could have said to the cop, "This isn't my child, here," instead of also carrying him away. But
kind of, the difference between this and a movie, that would, like Kolya or something like that, where you have the parent who lives alone. They don't want anything to do with the child.
Mm-hmm.
They initially just do not, and of course it melts their heart and all that. That's not here. No. He is in love with this kid immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Now, immediately after finding him, he does try to get rid of him.
Right, because he doesn't know what to do with it.
He doesn't know what to do, only because he doesn't know what to do.
Right.
I think, doesn't he put him in a he puts the child in a baby carriage.
Right, with another woman that has a baby. He's like, "Oh, I think you dropped this." Like he thought that it was hers. Like, "Oh, I think you dropped this," yeah. And then he sets it back down. It gets picked up by somebody else, who then puts it back into her cart.
Right.
And he just happens to be passing along.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Hey, you put your baby in my cart." He goes, "No, I didn't."
Yeah.
Well, it's yours now. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My favorite joke in the movie, because there are sight gags, but my favorite actual joke is, "What's his name? Hold on. John." It's like, "Let me check. I'll let you know."
Which is actually Jackie Coogan's first name.
Yeah. I thought that was hilarious.
John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, is it Jane or John? Well, we'll find out. Here, let me...
John.
Yeah. And I love the little chamber pot rig he's got, so that if he starts leaking, it goes right into the chamber.
Oh, the chair. Yeah. I love the depiction of cops in Chaplin's films. They're always about 3 feet tall. They're always about 2 feet taller than him.
Mm-hmm.
They're always in these pressed uniforms.
And they're always angry.
I love, because and they're an object of terror.
Mm-hmm.
To him, because when he was coming up in London, in the poor sections of London, this is probably how he saw police officers.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
This was his vision of a police officer.
And you know what? It's not really changed all that much in the 100 years since. You could totally.
If you live in a poor neighborhood, this is how you see a police officer.
Even if it's not a poor neighborhood, if it's a neighborhood with a majority people of color, even if it's not a poor neighborhood, that's how the police are.
And in his view, this was, when he grew up, police officers were there to bust some heads.
Mm-hmm.
They were there to run people out.
They weren't there to help.
They were not there to help. And that's generally how they're depicted in these films.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a sympathetic police officer that he ever depicted.
Oh, no.
Because he
probably
never saw one.
Yeah, probably not.
He probably knew people like the Tramp.
He probably did.
Who had to do things, who had to be clever
mm-hmm.
to survive.
Right.
It's amazing just the way he puts this together.
Yeah.
Especially with the mother, because the mother becomes a success.
Mm-hmm. She like a really famous singer.
She's a really famous singer. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching the film and I'm thinking, okay, now how is she going to know that this is her child? Aha! She finds the
She
note.
finds the note.
Brilliant.
Yep. And the
Brilliant.
fact that he still has it after all these years.
Yeah.
And then oh.
Oh.
Because doesn't she finds the note and then she can't find the kid and the tramp, so she puts an
Right.
ad in the paper saying that there's a lost child. Last seen with this guy, so not arrest him, he stole my baby. It was pick him up and bring him to my house. I want him to be a part of this kid's life because he was a part for the first 6 years. He's basically his father. He knows him better than I do.
Yeah.
So I'll give them both a good life. It's like, damn, this could not have ended
That's
any better.
that was surprising. I was thinking that she would have simply said thank you and he would have gone on his way.
Right, she
I
would have
think,
taken the kid and she would have said, "Thank you for everything you've done. Here's $50. Have a good life.
yeah,
Thanks
and
for
then
all
he
your
would
trouble."
have wandered off into the sunset. I
Mhm.
think that's how Chaplin would have ended it later.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
one of his later films, that's how he would have ended it.
Post City Lights,
Here,
that's how it would have gone.
here he you can still see him. He's still a brilliant filmmaker, but you can see that he's got a lot of work to do because he ends this film. The third act of this movie is very weird.
And it's very fast.
He has a dream sequence
Right.
at which, what is it? He dies, and there are angels all over the place.
Something like that. He's either dead or he's just entered
It's a dream
it's
state.
like a paradise. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody's got angel wings, and
And
it's
he
a
meets
long
back up
sequence.
with Jack, and because they'd been separated at this point.
Yeah,
And he falls asleep outside his apartment, and the door's
former
locked, so he
apartment.
can't get out. He can't get in.
Mhm.
And yeah, this whole dream sequence doesn't really fit
Yeah,
in the overall uh, uh, tone of the movie.
yeah.
It's just this little 2 or 3 minute, just weird
And it feels like it goes
expression.
on forever.
It does. It does.
Because I was telling you the other day, there's one sequence in this film I would take out, and I was watching it, and I was like, yeah, "This is it.
Yeah, and
This is the
when I
one."
got to it, I'm like, why is this here? And I
Yeah,
was like, oh, this must have been what he was talking about.
yeah. It feels like it goes on for 15 minutes because you're just like, okay, the movie's almost over. Why are we
Yeah, the
here?
movie's basically over.
Yeah,
That's the kind of thing that you would put like somewhere in the middle,
yeah.
not in the last 3 minutes of the movie.
Or in a short, make a short like that. There's no this.
Yeah,
It feels out of
it
place.
does. It does. It does. And that's that
Maybe he
scene.
needed it to call this a feature,
Well, that's what I mean. I think he got it. I think he padded it out with that just to get it to a qualifying
the feature length.
runtime. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it feels like filler, and
yeah,
in a Chaplin movie, filler is very rare to come by.
hmm
So when you see it, it stands out.
yeah. And the film does rush to a happy ending.
Oh yeah, it's the whole movie goes on, and it's fast, but it's not rushed
Right.
until like maybe the last 10 minutes, and then everything happens all at once. Then there's that slow dream sequence, and then half a minute later the movie's over.
Well, it's a lot like Dumbo. It's like you watch it and you're like, okay, this is floating around an hour in length, but it doesn't need anything else.
Right.
There's nothing you need to add to this film.
No, in
And
fact,
like I said at
like
the
we said, it
beginning,
could have been a little shorter.
it could have been a little shorter. But that's pretty much all I
Yeah,
got.
it's just a wonderful, wonderful movie. It's a fun movie.
It's a short movie. Honestly, I sat down to watch it one night. I sat down to watch it the other night, and I was like, okay, I've got an evening free. I need to watch this movie, and it was over, and I was like, wow, I've been sitting here for this is a little over 45 minutes.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I'll go find another movie now.
Find another movie now. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, that about wraps it up here for us. What do we have coming up?
Don't forget our Patreon.
Right.
We just did a Patreon on Citizen Kane. It's our 200th episode. We had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, that was we went.
We went around the world.
Oh yeah, we went in a different direction than our original discussion of the movie. And,
yeah.
I think it turned out
Which is
really
what
well.
we intended to do.
Yeah, that was the whole goal.
We talk the shit out of that movie.
And you know what? There's still probably more to talk about.
There's always more to talk about with Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
We also have a Patreon of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which is still out there. I'll post the links here on our YouTube. It's right down below this video.
Right, and you can also see. You can get to us on Patreon at pod_bay. It's the same handle that we use on Twitter. I'll just try to remember not to say that at the end because it's the same thing I say every week. But what do we have? What do we have coming up?
Next week is your pick.
Yes, where we're celebrating another centennial. The 100th birthday of Bengali.
Satyajit Ray.
Yeah, Bengali filmmaker Satyajit Ray. A few years ago, we did the Apu trilogy. Which were your first 3 movies for him. This will be your 4th movie for him.
And not much on Indian cinema.
Just a delightful film.
It's called The Music Room.
The Music Room. It's his 3rd feature because he did it right before Upper Censar. But for all intents and purposes, it's his first one outside of the Apu movies. Yeah, it's wonderful picture. I'm really looking forward to you seeing it. And then we get to do Bond. That's going to be a fun one.
We are talking about we're going to do this as an ongoing series. Whenever we can get to it, but we're going to talk about the first 3 Bond films. We're going to talk about Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and Goldfinger,
otherwise known as the 3 best ones.
Warts and all.
Yeah.
Warts and all.
There are warts.
It's a difficult series.
Listen. Live and Let Die is one of the single most racist movies I've ever seen in my life. Despite the amazing song that Paul McCartney puts to it, the movie's not very good.
That was, we'll get to that.
Yeah, but and then we're rounding out the month of August with our only Hitchcock for the month, or for the year.
For the year.
Strangers on a Train from 1951, which is, I think, a delightfully overlooked Hitchcock masterpiece. A lot of people forget about this. And they'll go for no reason to Dial M for Murder. I don't know why they would pick.
I don't like Hitchcock in color. I'm not a fan of Hitchcock in color.
Frenzy's probably his best color feature.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then we get into Sad September. Although I'm doing my best to work around that. I've got Dr. Strangelove pulled in there, and I'm looking for another comedy.
Look, September is not going to be a happy month anyway because this is the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Right.
And we're going to do a tribute to 9/11, focusing on the media, focusing on how it altered the media a little bit. But it is not going to be, I promise you, it will not be a depressing. I'm going to try to make sure that this is not a depressing experience. There's been a lot of, there's been enough of that. Yeah. I want to really kind of talk about it intellectually.
Yeah. We're not going to cover United 93.
Yeah.
Which would have been my suggestion.
We'll mention it.
Well, of course.
We'll mention it, but
As well as the bad 9/11 movies, like Reign Over Me and...
But that's all. That's what we got.
And
coming up.
so, we thank you very much for joining us. You can find all of our back episodes at the podbaydoorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can listen to us on iTunes and YouTube, and refer back to earlier in this couple-minute stretch to hear our Patreon and Twitter handles at pod_bay. You can, yeah, okay, I just got totally thrown off there. All right, yes, we thank you very much for listening, and the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
As I was slowly passing an orphan's home today, I stopped for just a little while to watch the children play. Alone the boy was standing, and when I asked him why, he turned with eyes that could not see, and he began to cry. I'm nobody's child. I'm nobody's child. Just like a flower, I'm growing wild.
No mama's arms to hold me, no daddy's smile. Nobody wants me, I'm nobody's child.
In every town and village, there are places just like this, with rows and rows of children, babies in their cribs. They've long since stopped the crying, as no one ever hears, and no one's there to notice them or take away the fears. Nobody's child, nobody's child. Just like a flower, they're growing wild.
Got no mommy's kisses, and no daddy's smile. Nobody wants them, they're nobody's child.
Nobody's child. They're nobody's child. Just like a flower, they're growing wild.
No mommy's kisses, and no daddy's smile. Nobody wants them, they're nobody's child. Nobody wants them, they're nobody's child.